Hey everybody, it's Chris, and I've got another interview for you today with Dale Figtree. Now, I've interviewed Dale a few years ago. She is a 45-year survivor of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. 45 years. And she healed herself with a holistic approach, nutrition and natural non-toxic therapies. And her story is wild. And you should definitely watch our first interview to hear her healing story because it was not easy. It was really tough for her. But she's back. And we want to talk a little bit about, uh, what to expect when you're going through the healing journey, because I do interview a lot of people who've healed, and a lot of those interviews, we don't have time to get into all the nitty gritty details of what foods they ate and the detoxification process and everything they went through. And Dale is a coach, and she has walked side by side or hand in hand with a lot of people through the cancer healing process. And so she has incredible insight on this. And so Dale, thanks for taking the time to do this.
My pleasure. Absolutely.
So would you take a moment and kind of introduce yourself a little better than I did and maybe talk a little bit about your story, but obviously we don't want to retell the whole thing because it's in another interview, but if you could do that, that'd be great.
Okay. Okay. Well, first of all, I was living in New York City, 1977, working in a kind of little bit of a toxic art studio. And I had trouble breathing and some pains, like an X-ray. And I discovered that I had a large tumor that was pressing on my lungs. It wasn't in my lungs, it was outside my lungs. And it was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And there weren't CT scans, so they had a really hard time figuring out what it was. So eventually I had exploratory surgery, and they discovered it, and they felt it wasn't removable. So they left it. They accidentally severed the nerve to one of my vocal cords. So if my voice sounds a little bit strange at times, it's overcompensating. Anyway, they decided, they put me on chemo for 2 months and then took me right off it. They just said it's destroying your immune system. It's like mustard gas. It was some heavy duty things. And they said, the only thing is, we're just going to try radiation. I mean, radiation should shrink it. We'll see what happens. And so I had radiation for 5 days a week for 6 months, which is unheard of these days. I mean, it was just a ridiculous amount of radiation. The tumor shrunk from the size of a grapefruit to the size of like a walnut. And then I started to stutter, and other problems started to happen. And they said, you could not have any more radiation ever again in this lifetime in that area. And I said, well, now that it's shrunk, can you take it out with surgery? And they said, nope, the radiation, the tissues would fall apart, they're burnt. There's nothing we could do. And this is before stem cell transplants and this. They said, there's nothing. And of course, for me, that was the most brilliant moment. Because I mean, on one hand, it was horrifying. On the other hand, they gave me back control. And, I went home and I literally did a prayer and I asked for help. And the next day I just became bombarded. And one of the things was that a woman called and said, I heard of a doctor that, a nutritionist that works with cancer patients quite successfully with some of them, gave me the number. I called him and told him my story, and he told me he'd call me back, and he never did. So he was the only card in my hand. So I called and called and called and called and called. I mean, literally after a few weeks, he finally called back. He said, okay, I'll see you. And he saw me. He wasn't very optimistic. He wrote out a very intense, extensive, detailed program with food. I went home and it was the only card in my hand. I did it religiously, like 110%. And within a week, I just started to detoxify. I didn't know that. I just had this weird cold. Usually when I had colds, I'd be totally stuffed up. But this one, it was just running. And the mucus had like little black strings in it. Like, what? Anyway, that went. And then the next few days I had the runs, and then that went. And then the next few days I started dropping weight. My skin started to break out. My energy started to drop. Anyway, I called him back after a month. I said, because he said, okay, check in after a month. So I went back to see him. He said, how you doing? And I was afraid to tell him how bad I was doing. I thought he would just say, I'm sorry, I can't work with you. So I said, I'm doing okay. I'm doing it all, So he didn't really respond. He just scribbled out a few changes, came back to me. By the second month, those reactions just total fatigue, and again, skin breakouts. And I think when I was a child, I used to get fever blisters. So I got a fever blister. I mean, stuff, nothing that was scary, but a lot of stuff.
It seemed like everything was going haywire. Did you
Well,
feel that way? Just like my body is just freaking out. I mean, it must have been discouraging and depressing too, right? You got no energy, and then on top of that, like you just one sickness, one condition, one flare up after another.
so I have to say one thing, that when they would resolve, I'd feel good. So it wasn't like a continuous downhill thing. It was like I go through the cold and then suddenly it's like, whoa, I'm feeling good, like even a little better. And then I go through the runs, and then my digestion would be great. So it was weird. It was this up and down, up and
Ups
down.
and downs.
The scary thing was the weight loss, which, once you've had cancer, it's scary. Anyway, the second time I went back to him and he asked me how I was, I broke out crying. I just spilled the beans and just said, this is happening, this is happening. And he looked at me, he said, great, it's beginning to work. And that was my wake-up call, because I had no idea. He didn't educate me. I never met anybody that did this before.
And he didn't tell you you're probably going to get worse before you get better.
No, he just was, he was an old man. He had been overwhelmed. What I didn't know was he was arrested 4 times for treating people with cancer. So he didn't want to work with cancer patients anymore. That's why he didn't call me back. But, I just pushed and pushed, and finally he just said, okay. So, and I ended up being one of the people carrying on his tradition. So it's irony how things happen, Anyway, no, he just scribbled it out and handed it to me. I mean, it was like, I don't want to be bothered, but since you're hounding me here, but he said, and from that point on, we bonded, and he really took me under his wing, and he'd answer all my questions. And I was really curious, really, really curious. And so for the next few months, it was up and down, up and down. And so I had an appointment with my medical doctor after 6 months. And I went in, did blood work, did x-rays, and he looked at me, he said, whoa. He said, what are you doing? And I told him. He went, no. He said, first of all, according to your blood work, you're my healthiest patient. He said, and I have to tell you, the lump is still there, but it hasn't changed. He said, that is so weird. You had a very fast growing malignant kind of tumor. It's like, I don't know what to think. So anyway, we left it at that. He said, well, that's it for now. Goodbye. We didn't even set up another appointment. And I just stayed. And let me just say, I wanted to drop in that that was one level. I was working on a few other levels. I mean, I would do restorative yoga, visualization every day was a big part of this. I mean, there's a spiritual, a social, I mean, it's like in the book Radical Remissions, she talks about these 9 things, cancer patients do. And when I saw that, I thought, I was doing all of them. But not knowing it, it just sort of intuitively, kind of happened. Anyhow,
Yeah, well, you were trying to improve every aspect of your life, as was I, and neither one of us had a great roadmap to follow. But you become very.
We are the roadmap.
Yeah,
Some people.
It's like you become very instinctively driven and very intuitively driven, and when you get into that mindset, you just start. I think you become very sensitive to things that will be harmful or helpful.
Right.
And if you're really, really honest with yourself, then you can, take a step back and look at your own life and your routine, the way you're thinking, the way you're behaving, right? And you can say, okay, I need to change, right? I need more of this in my life. I need less of that.
Exactly. And so I ended up moving to Florida, and I lived with a community of about 100 people, believe it or not. We were involved in yoga and things like that. And the head of the community also got involved with Dr. Curcio, and she started doing his diet. And then someone else in the community started doing it, and someone else, until everybody was doing it. And he'd come to Florida once a month and spend an entire day, 15 minutes with each person. And every program, there was a similarity, but everyone had a little bit of a different detail. And I became fascinated in wondering, why did he give them that? Why did he give them that? And then the things that happened to some people, not everybody, but to some people were just shocking. I mean, way beyond what was happening to me. I mean, one man broke out in this boil. It was like this size on his hip. And Dr. Curcio was really clear. Do not go and just have it cut open and drained. It says, like, let it mature. It's drawing. It may be cancer, maybe. And, you know, for 2 months, he soaked it, and then it opened, and it took a few months to heal. And that was one thing. And there were just other things. Somebody had their skin peel off their hands and then come back. There were just a lot of things that I was a witness to. I mean, little did I know that was really part of my education. You know, for me, I was fairly stable. I mean, every once in a while, I would go into the kind of detoxes that I explained. I get a rash that was unexplainable. But, you know, I knew to put vitamin E, aloe vera, you know, different things, and it would help. And then I'd have a phlegm, you know, not from a cold, and I'd just be coughing up. But, you know, by this time I was seeing Dr. Curcio still once a month. And I just trusted that a lot of the symptoms, that all the symptoms I had were serving the body. And I came to understand something I never knew before, which is that Dr. Curcio felt, and he was from a tradition called natural hygiene, they felt that all basic illnesses, you know, that acute illnesses like flus and colds and things like that actually were there to serve health. That what they did is they amplified the flushing out of deeper toxins that normally couldn't be removed. And the last thing, you know, was to stop. You didn't want to stop them. You know, you wanted to encourage them. So, you know, the first thing was you have to create a parameter because you don't want it to get out of control. So, you know, you like go to bed, you just chill. And then, you know, the diet could change to just blended soups or maybe just a juice diet so that the energy that's usually drawn into the digestive tract is free to be available to the body to use as it chooses to use. And then, you know, you look at a cat, you look at animals when they're sick, they crawl in a corner, they don't eat, they rest, and then they recover. You know, they'll drink a little water. And this was really similar. And I began to have a completely different perception of, you know, what symptoms were about and how to respond to them instead of seeing them as like, oh, no, that's easy to say. But I'll tell you, when you've had cancer and you start getting a pain in the area where you had cancer, it's not so easy to say, oh, this is just. So what I learned during this period was that there were some things I just needed to check out. I needed to go back to the doctor and get an x-ray. I needed to get a blood test and make sure that I didn't have pneumonia. You know, it was like there were times where I felt like I just need to have the assurance that, you know, and that's okay. I think that whatever works for you. I mean, if my clients are scared and feel like it could be something much worse, it's like, get it checked out. You know, it's like, so just use all the resources that we can.
Yeah, that's good advice because peace of mind is underrated, right? You know, I mean, if you're in a constant state of worry and anxiety and you're anxious about some ache or pain or, you know, something that's going on, yeah, right. You don't have to just tough it out and say like, oh, I'm detoxing. That must be what it is. And it may be what it is. But if you're also worried about it, then yeah, get it checked out. Just get that relief.
And I tell people, you know, don't be like an ostrich burying your head under the sand. It's like, let's deal with this. And just to quickly sort of complete this part. So after 3 years, I went through just a ridiculous detox, nothing I'd ever known existed, nothing that I ever saw. I did see some extreme things with this group, but nothing like this, which is just started coughing up golf ball size phlegm with no cold. So, okay, that was it. I could accept that. And then I ran a fever for like 3 months. Have you ever heard
Louise, yeah.
For 3 months. And then I started getting a pain in the area where I had cancer. And so, of course, I went and got an x-ray and nothing had changed. And I made sure I didn't have pneumonia. I got blood test. There was a doctor living in this community and he was freaked out, but I said, I'll go through all the tests. I don't want to be naive here, and nothing showed up. And my nutritional doctor said, I think this is the big one. Not everybody has to go through this, but you went through such extreme radiation and chemo, and some people do need to go through this. So I was in bed. The first month I lost 10 pounds. Second month I lost 10 pounds. I mean, oh, I forgot to mention my heartbeat went up to like 140 beats per minute. I mean, my body was just on such a intense kind of a concentrated effort. And I started going through detoxes from my hair to my teeth hurt and my skin broke out and body odor. I mean, and I think I had the runs for 6 weeks. I mean, don't ask. And at the end of 3 months, this doctor on the ranch was totally freaked out and said, I think you should call your parents, let them know. He was thinking I was going to die any minute. And most people thought I was just going to die of cancer that hadn't been discovered. And, I reached a point where I was getting so weak that I thought, maybe you could just die from detox. And so literally I went inside and with the most ferocity I could muster up, I said, enough. And within the next week, it cleared. It was like temperature back to normal, digestion back to normal, gained 6 pounds in a week. I mean, it was unbelievable. And then I started to break out in all the symptoms of chemotherapy. It was completely clear. I mean, there was no question. I mean, one of the crazy things was during chemo, I didn't lose my hair. I lost my hair color. So for the 2 months I was on chemo, I had an inch of hair that grew out much, much lighter. And then when I went off chemo, it came back. So as it grew down, as I said in the previous interview, I said, had this halo. Anyway, the same exact thing happened. The same exact thing happened. I had sores in the exact same place, rashes in the exact same place, kind of a smell, this kind of body odor with radiation. I mean, there was no question. And my nutritional doctor said, brilliant, just brilliant. He'd run a fasting clinic in upstate New York for 40 years, and he knew detox. He understood, he saw beyond what the average person knows. And he just said, you went through an extraordinary transformation. Not only was your body able to get rid of the underlying cause of the cancer, but he felt that he was able to get rid of the chemo and the, just the stuff. And it was like starting this clear slate, which was incredible because I felt like I grew a new body. I felt like I grew a new body. Anyway, to make a longer story short, shortly after that, I ended up deciding I was complete with this group and I moved to California, just started a bit of a new life. And people started to call me. They had heard of me from, people that had cancer. So I know this person, you should call them. So people started calling and my doctor was old. He'd retired. He didn't train people because he was so afraid with the police, didn't write books. It was like, so I would tell them what I did. And then I realized it wasn't enough. It's not enough to just say, do this diet, because if you don't have someone to support you, when the diet starts working and things start happening, you freak out because we're so conditioned to have fear when we have symptoms. They have to be stopped, and the symptoms most of the time are the body working stuff out. It's like, how do you support them without them getting out of control, So bit by bit, I could just feel myself just being lassoed in. And then at one point I thought, maybe this is really my path. And I inquired at a college for nutrition and they just snatched me. I'd written my book, my first book. It was Health After Cancer. Now it's Beyond Cancer Treatment. I changed the name. When they read the book, because I figured I'd put the story in a book. So I just say to people, I'll just sell you the book. So, but I knew it wasn't enough. And so when they got the book and everything, they just gave me a scholarship. They reeled me in and that was it. I spent a few years, got my PhD, ended up, the way life gifts, I just ended up apprenticing with an extraordinary nutritionist. He didn't work exactly like I worked, but he worked with blood work in a way that he knew more about blood work than any medical doctor I ever met. And he knew how food can affect it. And for me to apprentice for 6 months and learn that tool has given me through these years a way to interact with the medical, which has really been wonderful. And for both the medical and for my clients, because we see changes in their blood work in 1 month. I have 100-point club, people that dropped 100 points of cholesterol in 1 month. I mean, they start out very high. We're not talking about the average person, but it's so, the body so wants to heal, so wants to heal. And so through the years, I think it's been about 30 years now, I've been working with people, a lot of different situations, from children to people that have diabetes and heart disease and autoimmune and all sorts of things. But I would say in the last few years, the people with cancer, and a lot of it is due to your website, more and more people with cancer are reaching out. I mean, I'm working with somebody in New Zealand and China, Paris. I mean, and I'm just touched by these people. You get a strong connection, and they have tremendous gratitude to be able, because no one in their area has any idea. People go to support groups, but many times they don't bring in any of this stuff. They're just, so I just do what I can, and I have a lot of gratitude. But I tell people that giving you a food program, and we'll talk about that in a minute, is only half of what our work together is about. The other half is when you start to deepen into allowing the body to express its brilliance, to do the best it's capable of. You're going to need somebody to walk you through this, because things come up that you may not understand, you may not know what to do. And that is the crucial part. That's the part that really many times brings about the transformation. And so that part, I always educate people to expect it, to get in touch. I mean, I help through the process, educate them what they can do. And so it's such a strong part of the healing paradigm that, I just felt with all of your interviews, which are so wonderful, this is the piece that I never really heard gone into with any depth. And I felt the need to put it out there and let people be aware of it. No.
So I'd love for you to talk about the details of I know it evolved over time, but I guess the core dietary principles that you followed and that you are teaching people to follow. It's not the whole puzzle, but it's a big piece of the puzzle. And it's really what I like to say, or, what I realize in my own life and talk about often, is that the diet is really that's just the stepping stone, right, toward radical life change. And that's the thing you can change right away, right? That's really the easiest thing. You can change your diet today, right? There's a lot of things in your life you can't change that fast, right? But you can change your diet quickly, and that gets this momentum going, gets the ball rolling.
It's the foundation. And if people call me at all different stages. People call me who are trying to decide what to do. People call me who are already in chemo, already in surgery, have gone through all of that. Some of it's not working. I mean, it doesn't matter. Whatever stage, this foundation is crucial. So, that's that. Okay, the foundation. It's so interesting. I mean, I've come through the years to so appreciate that these bodies have a brilliance beyond most people's capacity to really appreciate or understand. And I love to use the metaphor of somebody running from a bear, being able to run faster than it was ever thought humanly possible, or be able to jump higher than is ever thought humanly possible. Our body contains capacity to do things beyond what we see as possible. And one of them is cleaning out deep level toxins and healing and repairing from what seems like impossible disease. Of course, it's not black and white. Everybody's different. There's no guarantee. Let me just say that, because life is complicated too, and there are other levels. But my experience is that when putting together a food program, you want to create a food program that literally has more fuel than the body ever had before. And when I'm talking about fuel, people think protein, people think calories. No, 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 no. In fact, minimal protein is considered the best when one is going through detoxification. And calories, it's nutrients, powerful nutrients, more nutrients than the body has ever taken in before. I mean, the programs I put people on, I would say, are about 3 times the amount of nutrients than they've ever consumed, more nutrients than anybody they know. And this intensity of nutrients empowers the body, gives the body fuel to go deeper. You know, the average diet, you know, it's full of calories, well, lots of protein, full of it, but the nutrient base is minimal. So what happens is people have enough energy to do this and that, but meanwhile, degenerative conditions are increasing. Most diseases nowadays, besides COVID, are, you know, most diseases are degenerative diseases rather than germs or bacteria. And degeneration, the body knows where that is. It knows how to reverse it and stop it if given the chance. But most people have no idea. And so they continue to do things that contribute to it, and they don't have the fuel for the body to really address it. And so, you know, that's the way they go. Degeneration here, degeneration there, you know, whatever. So my experience is that if somebody's on a food program that has this intensity, this fire, number one. And the second part is removing anything that dilutes it. Anything that dilutes it. You know, what are the things that dilute it? Foods that don't deliver a lot of nutrients, you know, like breads and pastas and, you know, things with sugar and refined foods, you know.
What they call the empty calories.
The empty calories, yeah. So, you know, those, and then things, of course, like alcohol that use a lot of energy for the body to neutralize, you know. And then, you know, coffee, I know coffee is a mixed bag because there are wonderful things about coffee, but the truth of the matter is that coffee burns the body's energy faster. Coffee doesn't have in it something that gives the body energy the way a freshly made vegetable juice does. That gives the body energy. No, coffee doesn't give the body energy. Coffee has caffeine, which burns the body's energy faster. And yeah, you feel good for a period of time, but then you drop to even lower energy. And when someone's on a crucial edge where every drop, I mean, my doctor, you know, he would just say, do not take long hot baths. You're going to use up some of the energy that you could use for this deep level healing. It's like every place, do not do heavy exercise during this time. You know, walking, stretching, your restorative yoga, but don't use this extra nutrients and pull it in the muscles. There'll be a time further down the line, hopefully, but during this time to really reduce or eliminate things that will dilute the freedom of the body to use its energy as it chooses, as its brilliant wisdom chooses, because the body has one major job, and that's survival. And it does it brilliantly if allowed to. And in the modern age, it's not so allowed to. And of course, in the past, you know, there are lots of different reasons for different things. But my experience with myself and with my clients is that you increase this nutrient intake, and wow, and the body smiles. You know, of course, it goes for things. So that's really that. You know, in a little nutshell, that's the bottom line to have a food program. So you're talking about every piece of food that enters the mouth is high nutrient food. Everything.
Fruits and vegetables, herbs and spices. Yeah.
Everything. And variety is the best. You know, people say, well, this food, and I say, yeah, it's good food, but every color has a gift. Every vegetable has a gift. Every different nut has a gift. You know, Brazil nuts are incredibly high in selenium, which is anti-cancer. Pumpkin seeds are really high in zinc for prostate. It's incredible. An immune system. It's, you know, every food. So for me, it's about, you know, helping people to understand the food choices that include just a wide variety of wonderful things. And I definitely adhere to a vegetarian-based diet primarily only because the animal fats are inflammatory fats. And, after years of listening to people talk about extraordinary healings, I would say 99% of those people went through vegetarian diets at that time. And so I adhere to the fact that those fats I mean, once people are better to bring back some animal products if they want, I think that's probably okay. I mean, at this point, I eat some eggs, I eat some goat cheese. I mean, I don't feel like it's a problem if it's in moderation. But when somebody is really in that kind of intensity, I call it an alchemical container. You know what an alchemical container is?
No.
Okay, in the Middle Ages, they had the sorcerers had this, I don't know if it was real or it was just a symbolism, but take a container, alchemical container, and you put lead in it. And then you'd put these herbs and salt and water and all of these things, and then you just seal it. And then you would just cook it like a pressure cooker, just slow, intense, 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 and steam would come out and it would go. And it would take a long time to do its process. And when it was complete, you unsealed it, you took the top off, and the lead had turned to gold.
Ah, yes, the alchemy process. Yes, yes, I understand.
Honestly, that is how I see
It's a good
this.
metaphor.
Just, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
So,
and what I did was obviously very similar. I mean, I chose what in my mind was a strategy called overdosing on nutrition, right?
exactly,
And
exactly.
I went from eating 1 to 2 servings of fruits and vegetables per day to eating between 15 and 20 servings of fruits and vegetables per day. So, I mean, it was a massive, dramatic shift in the amount of micronutrients that I was putting in my body, vitamins, minerals, enzymes, antioxidants, and then all these thousands of phytochemicals, phytonutrients that are in fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices, legumes, whole grains. So like all of those foods, yeah, and when you're focused on eating these high density food, there doesn't leave any room for the junk food and the fast food and the processed food and stuff like that because in my mind I was like everything on the end of my fork is either going to promote health or promote disease. So like I want to maximize every single meal, right? And have it the most anti-cancer nutrient dense meal possible, right? And so I could keep, I could maintain this momentum that I'd created where I'm just pumping in the good stuff, right? Pumping in the nutrition. Of course, I'm juicing throughout the day, every day. I'm eating giant bowls full of vegetables, fruit smoothies, right?
Yeah, the juices are like vegetable blood. I mean, it's like if you eat the full amount of food that you could possibly eat, and then you put the juices on top of it, you take it to this other level, which is extraordinary. The other thing I wanted to say as you were talking, it made me think also that, most people find that when their nutritional needs are met, their desire for sugar is like, it's not that they wouldn't like it, but that, craving or just, it's gone. It's gone. That craving is really the message. I need more. And people translate it into a quick hit. But,
Right.
it's gone. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're craving sugar, have fruit. Eat fruit. Fruit is good. Have fresh vegetable juices. There, carrots and beets have sweet tasting sugars. They're delicious, right? Like you will satisfy those cravings doing that. And then when you go back and, eat like something that's concentrated sugar, like a candy bar or a cookie or something, you'll find that it's like, oh man, wow. It's like, it's almost too intense. It's too sweet.
It's funny. I make these recipes like these cookies made from like ground up almonds and some tahini. It's beautiful sweet, and I just put a little maple syrup in it, and it's always too sweet. I keep thinking next time I need to put a little bit less in it. I'm so surprised at what I now think is sweet. The other thing I wanted to address is as we're talking, I think that people that listen to this think, well, I get nutrients because I take lots of vitamins. And I want to say that once something is processed, it has changed. I mean, its level of intensity is way back. Real food just has something that we don't completely even understand. It has a force in it. It has an energy. It has a matrix. And when you start to refine it and isolate it, not that supplements don't have their place, and I certainly take my share of supplements, but I use them as targets. I don't use them as nutrition. During COVID, it's like I got it. Increase my vitamin D, increase my vitamin C, increase my zinc. It's like there are times, and for me, with memory, after having chemo, it's like I do some supplements that are brilliant in terms of really helping to clear and sharpen. So it's like to target supplements, they have their place, but not as nutrition. As a matter of fact, I just had a talk with a friend this morning who told me he was making a smoothie with protein powder. And I said to him, whoa, just stop for 1 minute. Because I did an experiment a few years ago. I thought, my energy, I'm wondering if I could feel better. I'm going to try like pea protein and do 20 grams a day and see if it makes a difference, right? So that was the amount they said that, so I would make a smoothie with pea protein. And after a month, I woke up one morning and I was in a total state of acidosis. My mouth was burning. I knew it was that. I couldn't go near nuts or seeds for, like strong amino acid things for like a few days. And then it calmed down. And I could see that protein in foods, like in nuts, for instance, you've had fabulous protein, but the protein also has incredible anti-inflammatory oils. It's got fiber, it's got selenium, it's got all these nutrients. I mean, it's like the real thing. It's balanced. It's not going to throw you into an extreme. But when you take a food and you process it and you only take the amino acids out, and you're just taking the amino acids, boy, it turns your body acidic. And the first thing you learn in the healing arts is alkaline is healthier. Acidic bodies have a tendency more to, be degenerative and have disease. So I tell people, if you want protein, just hemp seeds are brilliant. Hemp seeds are like 3 tablespoons or 10 or 12 grams of protein. And they're whole foods. They have the oils, they have the fiber, they have everything. So I really encourage people to hear this loud and clear in terms of protein powders are a problem. Do the real thing. And that's almost with everything, to try to do the real thing that
I agree.
they should find in ways that was,
Hemp seeds are my preferred source of protein. Hemp seeds, almonds, walnuts, flax, and chia. That, I put those in smoothies. I put them in oatmeal.
But they need to be raw and they need to be whole. When I buy like raw walnuts pieces, they're rancid, so I get the walnut halves. Some people say, I have ground up flaxseed I put in my juice. Is that okay? No. After 5 minutes, when you ground flaxseed oxidizes when oxygen hits it. If you want to do flaxseed, grind it in a coffee grinder and use it within 5 minutes. Don't get already ground stuff, so raw.
I used to buy the pre-ground stuff. I did for years. And now I do use a little coffee bean grinder, and I grind flax and chia fresh and, put it in the oatmeal or whatever. So yeah, it's an extra step. It takes, 30 seconds. It's not a big deal.
And also with the oatmeal, and I do this too. I mean, I cook the oatmeal, and after it's cooked, I usually chop up or grind up walnuts, or I don't even bother grinding up hemp seeds. I sprinkled on top. I don't cook it with that because the heat can denature the extraordinary oils. So yeah.
That's good advice for sure. And so I'd love for you to touch on, we've got a few more minutes, but I'd love for you to talk about the healing journey, because obviously yours had so many ups and downs. I mean, it's still, in my mind, your story is one of the wildest healing stories I've ever heard in terms of the extreme amount of detoxification and weight loss and just suffering that you endured. That I remember the first time I heard your story, I actually read your book first and then we did the interview, but I was really thinking, oh my gosh, I don't think I could have survived, and so that's maybe the wrong word, but I don't think I could have endured the amount of ups and downs and suffering. And because every time something new pops up, you're thinking,
you would have,
yeah, I mean, but you're thinking, oh no, now what, right? Now this problem, now that problem. Like, so what is your advice to to patients, A, to prepare them for
Yeah.
what may be coming, and B, in the midst of a Herxheimer reaction, of a healing crisis, what are the two things that you say to them? Like, hey, here's what may happen. And if they're in the throes of it, what do you say?
Mhm. Okay. First of all, I just wanted to touch a little bit on, everyone's path is different. And I had this extraordinary grace to live in a community and have people around me that literally brought me my food when I went through these, and I had company. I mean, the way it was designed, I think if I were living on my own, if my parents were near and freaking out, it's like I could see so many situations where I would, with the symptoms I went through, I'm not sure I would have been able to have. So to find a support team is really crucial, really, really crucial. And, maybe, something online can happen where there's just a support team online, because a lot of people say, I know nobody, I go to a cancer support group and they have no idea what I'm talking about, so support is really important. And for me, that was huge. Okay. So the thing is that when somebody really starts to go through detox, again, connect with a health practitioner. Many naturopaths and some functional medical doctors understand this and won't try to just stop symptoms, but say, okay, how can we support you through this and let this sort of like clear? So to find somebody that is to get feedback and support, I think it's crucial. Okay. The second thing is, so when one starts going through symptoms, the first thing is that you want to just blow it off and say, oh, this is just detox, and keep operating the way you operate. My sense is that, a red flag comes up and says, create a container a safe container where you kind of like step back and rest and keep warm. And many times, reducing food, believe it or not, for a few days may be wise, because it just gives the body more energy that would be pulled into the digestive tract, more energy to go where else it's needed. So I might suggest to somebody to just go on a juice fast, an 8-ounce juice every 3 hours throughout the entire day. So it's about 6 juices a day. Excuse my voice. This is my one vocal cord, and when I talk a lot happens. If it's winter and they're in the east, I'm not going to suggest that. That's just too cold, So I might just say, do that and make a blended vegetable soup. Put in every vegetable and maybe a little bit of organic white miso. Organic white miso has the least amount of salt, and it's got good probiotic things. And in the last few years, I've recognized that soy actually is very supportive for healing. Whereas before, I wasn't sure if it could contribute to cancer if somebody had estrogenic cancer. The thing is that most soy is heavily pesticided, so it must be organic. Okay, so organic white miso is a beautiful bouillon. So I have people cook vegetable soup, and you can't put it in while it's cooking because it destroys the probiotic effect. So they'll make their soup, and afterwards they take a handheld blender and just put like a tablespoon of miso on it, and then just blend it into the soup and just live on that every few hours for the day. Keep really warm, rest. And those two things, between the soup and the juices, I find speed up the process, allow, and most of the time without secondary interference of problems that arise. So that's really the basic. Heat is one of the most brilliant healing tools. I mean, the idea of getting these heat packs, you can throw in a microwave or just put in boiling pot of hot water and let heat. And then you just wear on areas that, it just brings blood to the areas. It opens the vessels. I mean, there are things like that that enhance, whatever's going on. Using a neti pot is just brilliant. If the detox has to do with sinuses and phlegm, to use a neti pot and just clear out. I once read an article that 5 years ago in the New York Times that when Sears was like SARS, a scary potential, they said if you go home after you've been with people and just use a neti pot with salt, it's like you flush out any germs, because the viruses tend to hibernate for 24 hours in the sinuses. And, if you can just flush them out. I mean, I actually use a colloidal silver nasal spray, which is a little stronger than just salt. But when I've been around people during this time, I come home and I, just use the colloidal silver nasal spray, do neti pots. So neti pots are really brilliant. I mean, there are so many potential little things that you could bring in, as support. Sometimes just body work, having somebody come and work on your feet.
Yes.
Again, things like don't spend a lot of time in a hot bath. I mean, people think hot bath, hot Epsom salt, it just uses up so much energy for the body to try to readjust its temperature back to normal. And the saunas, I mean, I know that infrared saunas are supposed to be brilliant, but for someone that really needs energy focused inside, it just, maybe when somebody's finished with the detox, then an infrared sauna to get rid of the residue, but not during. You want the energy to stay inside.
Yeah, that's great advice. And there's a fine line, because cancer, when people have cancer, they have an energy problem, and they need as much energy as possible, right, at the cellular level, which you're getting from food, right? You're eating these raw vital nutrients that are providing energy to your body, and so that's really important. And so by the same token, there's benefit to exercise and there's benefit to saunas, but yeah, you want to be judicious about how you use them, because overuse and overexercise, right, it diverts your body's attention and it does steal energy, right, in an exercise capacity or in a sauna where your body's trying to stay cool. And then yeah, or if you're trying to build muscle, right, it's like I always tell folks in our community, like, don't get into bodybuilding, right, when you're trying to heal cancer. Right, you can maybe do that later, right, but you don't need to worry about building muscle, right? Your body needs as much energy as possible to focus on healing. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it is, and I don't, there's no exact science on how many times can I do a sauna and how many times can I exercise per week. And it kind of varies based on that person's condition. If they're stage 1, they got a lot of leeway. If they're stage 4, this is like critical, right? And they need every bit of energy they can muster for healing.
Yeah. And I tell people, hopefully there'll be a time where it's like, go for it. And you just push.
Yeah.
But there, so yeah. I think that it's really important to, it's in my mind. I mean, I feel like I want to bring up the keto diet.
Go for it.
Okay. So I know that that's been promoted, and I know that there are benefits in that. It's designed, cancer cells use more glucose than normal cells. So the idea is keeping glucose really low so that the cancer cells sort of starve. But I mean, to tell you the truth, I haven't met very many people that healed from cancer doing that, but
Me neither.
so I know that there are many ways, my big concern with that diet is that in eliminating so many foods, I don't think that they're going to get what we're talking about, the extraordinary bounty of 3 times the amount of nutrients than people normally take in. That's my really big concern with that. You could do it in a healthy way. And then, of course, the animal fats, if they're into that. Again, there are many different paths. And, I know that intermittent fasting is brilliant for many situations, but not necessarily for all situations, So people need to look at this and question it, because there's so much information out there. It's confusing. But I tell you, no matter what information out there, it always remains the same. That a huge amount of fuel empowers the body to do the best job it's capable of. That I know
Yes,
to be true.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
You need heavy ammunition, you need firepower. And the way I like to describe it is nutrition is the ammunition for your immune system, right?
Yeah.
That is the ammunition. And so if you're trying to, if we're using the cancer battle analogy, right? If you're trying to fight cancer and empower your immune cells, these soldiers, right, to fight cancer, to heal, they need weapons. And nutrition is the ammunition. So without nutrition,
Right nutrition.
the right nutrition, of course.
Yeah.
Without nutrition, you're fighting with no weapons, right? Without your immune system, you're fighting with no army. And that's the paradox of chemo, right? Because it's wiping out your immune system.
And you know, the irony in this country, you've got more fat people and more sick people. So it's like people are overfed and sicker. So it's not like
undernourished is what we say.
So it's not like we're saying a lot of food is going to, you know, it's the right kind of food.
It's anti-cancer nutrition. Like we talked about earlier, vitamins, minerals, enzymes, antioxidants. And I'm with you. I love what you said too about these supplements, because I love supplements too. I'm a supplement junkie. I can totally geek out on specific compounds and herbs and all kinds of stuff. And I like taking those things. It's kind of fun for me, but yeah, you should never get in the mindset where you can eat whatever you want and take a multivitamin and that's going to make up the difference, because it won't. Right. And I'm the same way. I take targeted supplements that I know I'm not getting in my daily diet, right? I'm eating tons of fruits and vegetables and plant foods, but there's just certain things like artemisinin, not getting that, not eating it, right? So one example of many, but supplements are supplemental. They can add a little extra fuel, right? They're a little bit of extra fuel, a little bit of extra firepower, but they're not going to cure you alone, right?
No. They're not the foundation. As I say, they're these brilliant darts. They can be these brilliant darts that amplify and fine tune. And I mean, yes, even though, you know, there were no supplements when I went through this, interestingly enough, but I do give my clients supplements. I mean, curcumin has been shown to be brilliant when it comes to, you know, helping with cancer. And I mean, there are a few other things, you know, that are, so yeah.
I love curcumin. It is one of my favorites. Okay, so, you know, we've covered a lot here, and I really appreciate what you're doing. I know you're still working with people one-on-one and
online now.
Yeah, online. Yeah, it's easy. We can work with people around the world.
Yeah.
But I just, you know, I appreciate your perspective and how diligent you were and how you persevered through so many ups and downs that would scare most people, right, out of what they're doing. And this is so common. I know you've seen it, right? One thing starts to get a little weird in their body, right? A new ache, a new pain, you know, something starts happening that they didn't expect, and then all of a sudden they, you know, quit the program, right? They quit eating tons of fruits and vegetables, they quit juicing, or they get rushed into treatment out of fear because they're consulting with a doctor that doesn't have any frame of reference for healing. And so even if the doctor doesn't know what's causing their ache or pain or symptom, they're often quick to rush them into a drug, you know, or to a procedure.
Totally. I mean,
We see it a lot. It happens a lot. And so, you know, I'm a broken record. I imagine you are too. I say the same things over and over again, hoping, so, you know, at some point they'll stick with my audience. But yeah, you have to expect the unexpected and trust the healing process. And like, I got sick recently and I ran a fever, and who knows what it was? Maybe it was that thing that's going around. Maybe it was something else, right? I didn't feel any need to go get a test, right? I've been sick before. I trust that my body can heal, and I take care of myself in a way that I know I have a robust immune system and I know what to do when I get sick. And so actually, for me, getting sick and running a fever, I like it. I enjoy it. psychologically. I don't enjoy it physically because it doesn't, running a fever is not fun. It's not pleasant. But psychologically, I enjoy it because I know what my immune system is doing during this process, right? Because a fever, your immune system kicks into high gear and it's wiping out all kinds of stuff besides that main thing that triggered, right, the fever. So there is a deep cleansing and restorative process that happens when you get sick, when you run a fever. And, my personal philosophy is I don't do anything to interfere with the fever. I don't try to bring it down. I've never had a, scary high fever, but, 102, 103, something like that. Like I let my body do its thing. I let the fever run its course. I let my immune system go to work and I rest. That's what I do. I rest. I drink tons of water. I take a ton of vitamin C and some other supplements and things, and maybe some juices and maybe a little soup. But, that's one thing that I've learned that has helped me a lot and I don't get afraid. I don't worry. I don't try to hasten my recovery. I just try to let my body do what it does. And, when you reduce a fever, you typically, in my experience, you prolong it.
Or else you abort something that needs to be cleared for like a later date. I mean, yeah, fevers are brilliant. I mean, there have been times where doctors actually encouraged fevers, help to bring fevers on. I mean, things nowadays, things, I don't know, things are changing. I think that some functional medical doctors, there's younger doctors that are more open and beginning to see a larger wholeness when it comes to healing.
For sure. Yeah. Fevers are definitely, Dr. William Coley was inducing fevers and saw cancers reversed with inducement of fever therapy, and hyperthermia is a sort of induced fever state. Yeah. It's an incredible field of research and it's not new.
You probably read articles that's like some researchers have used a herpes virus that has cured cancer. It's like, if anyone's had herpes, I warn them, when you detox, the herpes will come out. Don't try to stop them. Don't take that medicine that, it's like it's serving and something's happening, something's coming out. So, but, little vitamin E helps to, kind of keep it. But the one thing I wanted to share, though, I think that after all these years working with people, I think one of the issues is that, there are many people that just get it and follow very carefully, but they don't do the full amount. They don't do the intensity, because the truth of the matter is it's not easy. And we have this mechanism that says, I'm full. And it's like, I'm full. But my experience is that I had to override that. That was the sacrifice I had to override to create a greater fire. And in the beginning, when I first started eating my doctor's suggestions, I could do breakfast, I could do lunch, but dinner, halfway through after my juice and my big salad and halfway through my vegetables, totally full. But there wasn't even the voice saying enough. There wasn't even the voice. It was like, I need to do this 100%. This is the only card in my hand. Thank goodness this doctor finally said he would see me. I'm not. And so, the first few weeks, I actually went to sleep every night with a stomach ache and a hot water bottle.
Because you eat so much.
And after 3 weeks, it completely changed. I could eat more than anybody I knew. My stomach just needed to stretch. And so to get people to go through the discomfort of sometimes forcing things, to understand that they're just opening a new door, they're creating a new process. It will be a new habit, but sometimes it's not like automatic and it's not easy, and there's sacrifice some struggle every step of the way. So to have that amount of fuel that we're talking about in this whole conversation is usually more food than the average person will eat during the day.
Food is medicine.
And this is for situations that are, unusual situations, critical situations, but it can make an extraordinary difference. I mean, it could possibly make the difference between life and death.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And I think that if you remind yourself, if you keep this top of mind, that food is medicine, right? Food is medicine, and the more medicine, the better, right? And so if you're, and this is common in our community as it is, I'm sure in yours, is when people start eating raw foods and giant salads and juices, they're like, I'm full. I feel like I'm full all the time. I'm not hungry. How do you eat? I'm not even hungry at dinner time. It's like, this is medicine, right? Get it in your body, right? Any way possible. And so one practical suggestion, and this is actually in Beat Cancer Kitchen, my cookbook, you can take all those salad ingredients and you can blend them up. You can liquefy them. You can drink them as this giant green smoothie. It tastes a little funky, but you can get them in your body, right? A different way than having to chew if your jaw is exhausted. And what's most important at the end of the day is just getting it in there, right? Getting it in there, whatever, any way you can. And so the juices, the giant salads, the smoothies, right?
Chris, I want to say two things. First of all, we're connected in that way. My doctor, every meal started with a juice and a blended salad. So we're right. Yeah. He knew that to eat a huge salad like this could overwhelm people. So everything got thrown in the blender, just kind of like a smoothie. Well, the second thing I completely forgot it was about that. But anyway, yes, to try to make the food in ways that quantity is easier. Oh, I know. The second thing was, as I said, my doctor was so finicky about saving energy wherever you could that he felt that the blended salad not only made it easier, but it was pre-digested. So it actually saved some energy in terms of breaking it down and digesting it. So there are two sides to, it's like I tell people, don't work hard, work smart. It's like wash all your vegetables when you come home, put them in a bin. When you make juice, you take the bin out, 3 minutes, you have your juice. Don't sit around going through bags and washing and then think that you'll get 3 juices or more a day if you do, so work smart.
Yeah, work smart. You gotta rearrange your routine. You got to get efficient, right? Figure out how to be the most efficient with your time. And you're right. Yeah, chewing takes energy, right? So if you bypass the chewing and you're
break things down also.
Yeah, and you're just swallowing, then you are conserving some energy there too. And one more anecdote, my friend Courtney Campbell, who is now, I think, a 10-year lymphoma survivor. And Courtney healed it completely naturally, had no conventional treatment at all. And she was Hodgkin's, I believe. But her main nutritional strategy was making this giant green smoothie every morning. And I think it was pushing 40 ounces, almost the full blender. And she could not stand the taste. She could not stand it. And she would hold her nose to drink it. She would hold her nose, like you or me or most people, like, okay, it's a little funky, whatever. It's a bunch of vegetables blended up, whatever. It's fine. I can get it down. But she really had issues. And so for, I don't know, the better part of a couple of years, every single day, every sip, she would hold her nose to drink it. And to me, that is so awesome, because like that to me is a picture of someone who is determined to get well, who is not going to let anything get in their way of reaching their goal, which is healthy island, right? She's like, I don't care what it tastes like. I'm getting it in my body. This is my medicine. If I have to hold my nose, I'm doing it.
Yeah, she's connected to her inner warrior.
Yeah. Isn't that great?
Love it.
Well, Dr. Dale Figtree, thank you so much. It's been fun to hang out with you. You always have so much wisdom, and your story again is so remarkable and amazing and inspiring. 45 years is such an incredible accomplishment. You must feel so good about that. And I'm so glad you're still in great health and helping other people and just being a light in the world. We're all trying to shine a light. And if we get all our lights together, it's pretty bright. So that's what we're up to. Thanks again for doing this.
My pleasure. And I have to tell you, at the end of most of my consultations, I write down your website and I say, every day, listen to a different testimonial, keep this alive, keep it inspired. And the fact that you provide that, what a gift to more people than I'm sure you have any idea.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. And yeah, that's why I do it. You know, one story can change your life, but 2, 4, 8, 10, 12, 20, 50 stories. I mean, all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, this isn't a fluke. This isn't just some lucky person. Like, what are the common threads between all of these people who've successfully healed? And it's like, if you want to climb Mount Everest, right? Well, you could just fly to Peru. Is that where it is? Peru?
Oh,
Nepal. You could just fly to Nepal and buy some gear and just try to climb it, right? You'll probably die, right? Or you can study and learn exactly how the people who have successfully climbed it did it, right? You can follow in their footsteps and learn from them. And so this is the exact same thing, right? Yes, it's dangerous. Yes, your life is at risk. It's not easy. It takes time, energy, and effort, but there are people who have ascended this mountain and come back down victorious, right? And so I love sharing these stories, your story and so many others. It's just like I get so much joy and fulfillment from doing that. So yeah, I'm just going to keep on doing it.
please do.
Thank you, Dr. Dale. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching. And please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're a YouTuber, and share this video with people you care about. You know, your friends and family need to know. They need to understand that cancer does not have to be a death sentence, that your body creates cancer. Your body can heal it if given the proper nutrients and care. That is the message. And that is a message of empowerment, not just for you watching, but for everyone you know, right? You can prevent cancer, it can be healed, but you've got to be willing to change your life. So thanks for watching again. See you on the next one.